I'm Audrey Mann Cronin. I'm a communications consultant and a Chappaqua mom. I'm here to talk to you this evening about how our celebrity culture and our social media channels are influencing the way that we communicate. And yes, even here in Chappaqua. We'll talk about the like you know syndrome and the new verbal fashion trends, what they are, what they sound like, and why they matter, particularly to girls and women, and how we should all learn to say it like we mean it. Later, I'll introduce you to my amazing panel of experts. In the words of Joan Rivers, who I miss, can we talk? Or should I say, can we talk? Listen, I'm all for leaning in. You know Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook's mission to empower girls and women to get a seat at the proverbial table. But listening to how girls and women speak today in this Kardashian-infested culture gives me pause. Maybe before we all lean in, we need to, learn to speak articulately and with conviction. Listen, I'm guilty too, I am. But using these ticks and fillers, these likes, you knows, can weaken our speech, making us sound unsure, and yes, maybe even incapable. So whether you're giving a big presentation in a library like this, or to your classmates, or maybe you're interviewing for a new job, or a summer internship, or with a college recruiter, or just trying to engage classmates in class or colleagues in a meeting, learning to speak articulately and with confidence is paramount to being taken seriously. But did you hear? There's a new verbal fashion trend. Like, totally, literally, I mean, I can't even, whatever. Listen, we're all in the same pot of habit-forming, lazy-lipped, pop culture-inspired soup. There is a history here. How many grew up in the 70s and 80s and remember Valley Girl, right? Valley Girl speak. You did not, Allie. Like I'm so sure, right? Grody. Well, the thing is, Valley Girl speak has actually made it to the 21st century and become even more pervasive with more verbal tics, more phrases, right? It's so much easier to share with social media. And even worse, it's gotten to be fashionable. So I recently read pop culture icon Rob Lowe's book, Love Life, and this jumped out at me, right? Valley Girl speaks cultural importance can unfortunately not be overstated. Overnight, perfectly well-educated and articulate kids adopted a faux bimbo lilt and hair-flopping attitude. The next time your teenage kid says the word like twice in a 5-word sentence, you'll know who to thank. Right on, Rob Lowe. So as I mentioned, I'm a communications consultant. I have been for 25 plus years. I work with business executives every day on honing their messages and then learning how to articulate them and deliver them, right? So communications and all these trends are always on my radar. But how did this get to be my soapbox? How did this get to be my baby? Well, she's sitting here, actually my baby, my very bright, poised, articulate little girl started using the likes, you knows, the ums and the uhs, and I can blame it on her peers, but she probably got much of it from me. The next thing that happened that same week was a colleague came to me and he said he had these 2 brilliant, very competent women that worked for him, but he cringed when he heard them in a meeting. He wanted to just pull them aside and impress upon them the importance of not peppering their speech with this mindless repetition, these likes, you knows. And he told me about something called uptalk or upspeak, which is when you say something that would be a proclamation, but it turns into a question, right? So he wanted to pull them aside and say, listen, you're undermining your competence. The third thing that happened right in that same week was I had a gynecology appointment. Okay, TMI, too much information, right? But you know how when you go to the gynecologist or the doctor, any doctor, and you wait in the waiting room and then you wait in the examining room? So knowing this, I printed out my blog, my Say It Like You Mean It blog, and I was working on it when the doctor came in. And she asked me what I was working on, and when I told her, she was so passionate about the issue. She said that she even saw this with fellow surgeons in the operating room, fellow female surgeons in the operating room. She felt that it was really most of this was this uptalk, this turning these proclamations into questions was a way to gain consensus, to gain likability. But then she gave me this crazy, crazy example. She said that whereas a male surgeon might say, scalpel, a female surgeon might say, would you mind handing me the scalpel? Not really inspiring in a high-stakes situation. So as I'm exploring and I'm writing, I should mention that I have my own communications business whose tagline has always been, say it like you mean it. So I kind of always had this in the back of my mind. And as I was looking into this whole issue, I found Taylor Malley. I don't know if you know him. He's a poetry slam artist, and I'd like you to play his Whatever Like You Know. So let's hope the sound works.
In case you hadn't realized, it has somehow become uncool to sound like you know what you're talking about. Or believe strongly in what you're, saying. Invisible question marks and parenthetical you knows and you know what I'm sayings have been attaching themselves to the ends of our sentences, even when those sentences aren't, questions. Declarative sentences, so called because they used to, declare things to be true, okay? As opposed to other things that are, totally, not. They've been infected by this tragically cool and totally hip interrogative tone. As if I'm saying, don't think I'm a nerd just because I've, noticed this, okay? I have nothing personally invested in my own opinions. I'm just, inviting you to join me on the bandwagon of my own uncertainty. What has happened to our conviction? Where are the limbs out on which we once walked? Have they been, chopped down with the rest of the rainforest? Or do we have, nothing to say? Has society just become so filled with these conflicting feelings of that we've just gotten to the point where we're the most aggressively inarticulate generation to come along since, a long time ago? So I implore you, I entreat you, and I challenge you to speak with conviction, to say what you believe in a manner that bespeaks the determination with which you believe it. Because contrary to the wisdom of the bumper sticker, it is not enough these days to simply question authority. You gotta speak with it, too.
I wish he was here. He's so amazing. He's my hero. We need to empower girls and women to find their own authentic voice. But it's hard because the fact is we live in this celebrity-infested culture. And the way our pop culture icons act and speak can't help but influence us. Listen, we all want to be part of the cool crowd, and the way we talk is a tribal form of bonding. So I have up here some pop culture icons. You probably recognize them. We've got Taylor Swift, Dahlia from Suburgatory, Britney Spears, Zooey Deschanel, and Kim Kardashian. One of these is my poster child for all of these verbal tics. So think about, and these verbal fashion trends. And before we get to who it is, I want to talk about something called vocal fry, which I never even knew how to name. It's that creaky voice that comes at the very end of the sentence. It's pretty epidemic, apparently. I've heard it a lot. And it makes it sound like you're actually running out of oxygen. So listen for that. We'll get into that a little bit more. But okay, so you guys all have in mind who you think this is? All right, here we go.
You wrote the theme song for the show.
I did.
Can you tell me a little bit about that process?
Yeah, there were theme songs I had like in mind as like inspiration. Like I love the theme from Walkabout Cotter, and that was John Sebastian wrote that from The Love and Spoonful. I really like love that sound. So I like wanted something upbeat that really felt like a theme song in life. So
I can't really take that much more of that. I'll spare you all. You might have thought she was acting, but no, this was an interview with The Hollywood Reporter. And I think it does illustrate the point, right? So, as a mother and a woman in the workforce, I'm very passionate about equality of women. And though boys and men do this too, they do. Girls and women are the biggest offenders. And listen, we don't need any more obstacles in our way. So I loved this quote. This is from Lena Roy. She's a young adult author, the director of Rightopia Lab, and she actually happens to be one of our panelists tonight. She said, as we gallantly strive towards breaking away from a patriarchal society, it's still so much easier to dismiss girls and women because of verbal tics and crutches. Thank you. So does the way that we speak affect how we are perceived, right? So this is what's playing in my mind. And then what happens? Science backs this up. And this was actually a study specifically on vocal fry, that creaky voice I was talking to you about. So what they did was they had 7 men and 7 women speak in this vocal fry. And then they had, I kind of just did it there, vocal fry. Fry. And they had 800 respondees, 800 people that listened and then filled out a survey. And so this was with Duke University and the University of Miami, and this is what they found. Women speaking with vocal fry are found to be less educated, competent, trustworthy, attractive, and appealing as a job candidate. The other takeaway was that perceptions of speakers based on their voices can influence hiring preferences for female job candidates, not male, female. So the press coverage on this was just incredible. It was in national newspapers, on NPR, Slate, and then also in the women's magazines. So for example, headline in Ms., Vocal Fry presents new challenge for women at work. The Atlantic, vocal fry may hurt women's job prospects. And Shape, is your voice costing you your job? So another observation I had with vocal fry is it actually manifests itself in the written word. And a lot of you may notice this with all these extra Y's and L's and E's that are coming at the end of words. I see it in texting, I see it in social media, I'm sure you see it too, but to actually demonstrate it, I'm going to show you some words and I'm going to call upon my lovely daughter Amanda to please stand up. Oh, she even has a microphone, let's see if that works. And I'm going to show you a word, and then she's going to speak it in vocal fry, okay? Ready? Here we go.
Hey. Party. OMG.
Thank you, Amanda. Very well done. Social media is an enabler, and we do live in this time of digital communications and social media channels. And there is no doubt that this is influencing how we communicate. It's so pervasive, it's so instantaneous, it's so easy to share. You get this much space, right? So all these abbreviations and acronyms are really helpful. They are. But is it okay to speak like we text? We'll let that stand out there. And how about those hashtags? Right? What about hashtags? So hashtags were created as meta tags for search. Oops, sorry. Were created as meta tags for searching. You probably all know this, but you would put a hashtag in to, say, Twitter. Maybe you're hashtagging Chappaqua Library to see what's happening. Or maybe the climate change march this weekend. We'll plug for that. And maybe it's my Say It Like You Mean It blog. So you do hashtag Say It Like You Mean It, right? And everything comes up on that topic. Well, it's actually taken on a life of its own. Hashtags have become a whole new form of communicating. I see it as a new form of poetry. This is an example of an Instagram from my niece Naomi. She's a 20-year-old theater major at the University of Maryland. And this is a post she put where she got this fake tattoo. See, tatted up, finally, right? So she writes, hashtag, am I cool yet? Hashtag, if you have to ask. Hashtag, probably not. Hashtag, shoot. Right, a little poem there. So I've been talking to Naomi because she's very wise and she's a theater major and she's concerned about speaking eloquently. And in all her wisdom, when I said to her, does the way we speak really matter, and does it matter in our professional lives? What she said to me was, what happens in rehearsal comes out on stage. In other words, these are habits. So what we do in our personal life comes out in our professional lives. On that topic, right? So what about our professional lives? What about when we're looking for a job? Well, another new study, the IDC, and sponsored by Microsoft, they did a white paper and they looked at the top 100 skills across all occupations. They used data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. They looked at 14.6 million job postings, and it was from April to September of 2013. And what did they find? Far and away, the #1 skill across all job applications was oral and written communication skills. And then when they re-swizzled the data and they looked at high salary, high growth occupations, again, oral and written communications came in as the #1 skill. The takeaway, no matter what job you're pursuing, no matter what leadership position you're looking to, don't just dress for success, learn to speak and write to impress. Okay, so now where does this actually become a reality? Where does the rubber hit the so-called road? So in oral communications, there are job and internship interviews, college interviews, school and leadership opportunities, engaging classmates and colleagues in meetings and presentations. And in written communications, job applications, cover letters, college essays, and on our social channels, and just a little aside, keep those feeds clean. So here is an exaggerated example, a parody of what not to do. It's called Bethany's Cover Letter. You might recognize the star. Here we go.
Bethany Taylor, 50 Girl Street, Totally, Texas, 75211, 555-555-5555. Hey, it's Bethany at hotmail.com. Human Resources Manager, my fave shoe company, 7 Perth Place, Fashionista, California, 90210. Dear Human Resources Manager, so, I'm applying for the, bitchin' job you posted on your website. The ad caught my eye because it was hashtag tote swaggy, and I need a job to support my hashtag love of shoes and other shopping habits. BTW, the candy apple red nail polish in your ad is like totally awesome. I love. Already you can see we would make a perfect match. As you will see on my attached resume, Instagram, @kittenlover245, and selfie, I'm super gorge and popular, 826 besties, and I've worked at Shoe Heaven, Forever 22, and Stack Nail Polishes at Posh Nails.
Hey! How's it going? What's up? No way. Are you kidding? Oh my gosh! No way did he say that. What are you doing today? Oh, me? Oh, I'm just writing this cover letter, you know. Doing this new job. I'm really excited about it, but you know, cover letters are hard. Yeah. Okay, see you later. Bye, love ya.
With all my experience, I'm sure I can help my fave shoe company achieve like whatever it wants to achieve. Hashtag, does that make any sense? Hashtag 2am logic. Hashtag BRB, my brain is exploding. So, you know, why should you hire me? Well, like I'm not a fake model. I can walk in 6-inch heels. I'm good with people and, you know, whatever. I mean, I can't. I can't. I literally can't even imagine how awesome it would be to work for such a damn haughty company. I will text you to discuss the possibility of setting up a meeting to discuss ways I can work on behalf of your company. OMG, did I just say that? Awkward. TBH, I'd make a great employee. Thank you. Peace out, Bethany Taylor.
So you'll be able to find this on YouTube and share it. And thank you to my muse, my collaborator, my best girl. Oops. Okay, now it's time to meet the panel. First up, Lena Roy, young adult author, Westchester branch of Rytopia Lab. Pam Tiffman, human resources consultant, and Marcy Macaluso, speech language pathologist. These guys are so tremendous. I'm so lucky to have them as my collaborators.
Are you not going to introduce me?
I did, but you were walking up. Marcy Macaluso. All right, so I'm going to ask each one of them a question, and then we're going to go through a bunch of different questions, and then I'm going to open it up to you, okay? So my first question is for Lena. Lena, as the director of Rytopia Lab, you work with teenagers all the time on their writing and on their speaking. Can you talk to us about your experience when it comes to all these verbal fashion trends and so forth?
Absolutely.
Yay.
But, I put stuff on cards so that I wouldn't do all the ums and ahs and likes, So cheated a little.
It's hard. I'm so guilty.
Rytopia Lab works with kids and teens at all levels to help empower them to be confident with the written and spoken word. Everyone can benefit from workshops with mentors and peers to help us become more aware of and improve both our speech and writing patterns. Our ancestors passed down stories to future generations through an oral tradition, and only decades ago, before email and texting, we had an epistolary society where verbal and written communication were paramount. Social media is wonderful in that it's brought us closer together, but it has also made us lazier, myself included. And I used to be terrified of public speaking until I was forced into it when my writing turned me into an author, and I became impassioned by my work at Rytopia Lab. Sharing something that we're passionate about certainly makes it so much easier. When we are unprepared, or don't know what we really think about something, our speech is peppered with likes, us, in hopes that someone else will intuit that we're trying to connect with them. The problem is that instead of connecting, it makes us sound unprofessional and incompetent. For many, the first step in fluid verbal communication is through writing. In a good piece of writing, do we end every sentence with a question mark? Do we stumble over our words? Do we sound the way we talk? In Mytopia Lab's workshops, we read out loud our work, not only to find our voice, but in this context, reading aloud enables us to hear how we sound and to spot check not only grammatical errors, but contextual errors. When we share our work out loud, I always remind my writers to say it like you mean it, to speak with, as Taylor Molly, such a crush on him, has implored, courage and conviction. Reading out loud makes us slow down and think about what we are saying. When we practice writing, sports, and playing instruments, why don't we practice speaking? Our job as adults, all of us here, is to prepare the next generation for meaningful lives by helping our youth find things that they are passionate about. For students, nowhere is this more evident in crafting the college essay. The college essay is a personal essay and may be the only chance a student has to show who they are. Are you someone who is aware of your flaws and seeks to progress and evolve? Are you willing to practice speaking with conviction and confidence? Are you willing to say it like you mean it, whether it's talking to your best friend, writing a college essay, or applying for a job? So obviously I prepare my thoughts. Writing is thinking for me, so I prepare my thoughts that way. And I will speak a little more off the cuff later.
Thank you, Lena. So many great chunks there. So many great pieces of wisdom. Thank you so much. So, okay, Pam Schiffman, next up. So you and I both have teenagers, teenage girl, teenage boy. So, we live this, But now you're a human resources consultant. So can you talk to us about what happens when, say, a couple candidates come into interview and they have similar resumes, similar qualifications, and how presentation factors into that?
Sure. I've been interviewing on university campuses and in corporations for 25 plus years. And I've interviewed candidates who look perfect on paper alongside candidates who don't look as perfect on paper. And what I've learned is that while your resume gets you in the door, the interview is what gets you the job. So the candidate who's most intelligent, most articulate, most enthusiastic, they get the job offer regardless of their resume. And so while it's very important to prepare the right resume that will get you the interview, it's even more important to spend time preparing for an interview so that you can present yourself in the best light possible.
Wonderful. Thank you. More words of wisdom. Thank you, Pam. Okay, Marcy. So Marcy, you're a speech language pathologist, but in recent years you've been focusing more on something called accent modification. And that looks at language behavior and habits. Can you talk to us about that and your experiences there and how that would apply here?
Oh, well, sure. But I thought you were going to ask me if verbal tics were contagious.
Well, you're going to get that one too.
Oh. I thought that was now. Well, speech language pathology, I spent my time in early intervention, and that's working with children with disorders and disabilities who have pathologies. Now, language behaviors, like accent, are behaviors, not pathologies. So you're not doing therapy. You're being a teacher. You're retraining. You're rehabituating, which would be the same process in both of these areas, both accent modification and speech modification. And you're addressing very specific speech and language habits that you would like to change. Not that I would like to change, but the individual that I'm teaching or coaching would like to change.
Right. So me and Marcy have talked a lot, so it's not necessarily totally impromptu. We did get together. Oop, I didn't show their beautiful pictures. Okay, there's Marcy. Okay, next. So we'll go, wait, let's go back to Pam because hers is cute too. Okay, Pam, okay,
Yeah,
and
really
Marcy,
good picture.
right. Okay. So Marcy and I talked about this idea of speech modification, and we did an outline of a program. I'm going to take you through a couple of these. I think, Marcy, you can kick it off. But as you were just saying, unless somebody who doesn't want, wants to do this, there really needs to start with awareness, right? So do you want to take awareness and self-evaluation and goal setting?
Yeah.
And actually, I should mention, I have some takeaways here. There is one where it's a 3-step screener, so you can actually see what your issues are or are not. And then there's a sign-in sheet, so I'll just ask you all if you wouldn't mind to sign in. Okay, with that, go ahead.
Well, awareness is key. In my work with individuals who are hoping to improve their American accent, I am astonished to learn that they don't know they have an accent. They know they might have a little accent, but they have absolutely no idea that they are not being clearly understood by their listener. That surprised me so much. But once I understood it, I started the process and I understood how important the process of raising your awareness of how you sound. That's number one, and that's essential before you can do any of the other work. You have to step back, objectify your sound. You're this other person. You need to listen, you need to look, and then you need to start on the whole process of changing. But you can't change until you're aware.
Right. So you kind of hit on self-evaluation and
Yes.
goal setting, right? So you need to set those goals. What are these things that you want to change?
Absolutely. Once you can be realistic and objective about how you're sounding, then you set your goals and you lay out the program, and then you have to work really hard to change those habits.
Right. And we talked about videotaping and mock interviews and presentations. So just a really great way of figuring out what your issues are, just videotaping yourself, using your phone. Maybe setting up a mock interview for a job, or just putting together a presentation for class and recording yourself doing that. Just, you really need to understand what your issues are. And then there's some games you can play. So this was fun. I was driving my daughter with her friends to a birthday movie, and they started playing this game called the game. So the game is you pick a topic and you challenge your friend to talk about that topic for 1 minute. Emma's actually really good. And not say, and then you point out what words you don't want them to say, like, whatever, totally. So that's a 60-second game that actually kids are playing, so that's terrific. At least here in Chappaqua, there's some awareness. Then there's that game Taboo. Do you guys remember Taboo, where you pick a card and there's like an apple or a banana or a horse, and you have to try to have the person guess what's on the card? You can do that too. You can say, guess what this is, but you can say these following words. I've talked to teachers that play this game in class where they make their kids present. They can't say like it. I think it happens in Toastmasters where they have to get up and they ping them. You're nodding your head. Mm-hmm. Where if they say like, they count the number of likes. I'm actually wanting to develop an app for this. So anybody have any good contacts there? So there are games that we can employ to help us with this. Another one was modeling eloquent speakers. So we were just talking about Eleanor Roosevelt and the Roosevelts, and Martin, how eloquent they were when they were out there speaking, giving their addresses, how beautiful they sounded. And I think it would be great for us to get one of those speeches and get that under our tongue and really feel what eloquent, beautiful speech sounds like. And then practice, right? Like anything.
It's up to you.
It's up to you. What Lena said, we practice sports, we practice ballet, we practice swimming, we practice writing. We should be practicing how we speak. Okay, so here's a bunch of questions for you guys. Ready? Marcy, yours will come soon. Do boys and men do it too? And what are their issues behind their speech patterns? Who was the one that wanted to take this? Lena, what do you think?
Well, I have 2 boys at home. Actually, 3. I have my husband. And when I was talking to them about it, they had a lot to say about it. My husband, Rob, of course, said, because he's an encyclopedia, he said, well, studies show that men and boys say more when they're talking to girls, and girls say more when they're talking to boys. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And they mumble a lot. And I used to mumble a lot as a teenager too. And I was thinking, well, why did I do that? And I think it's because I didn't always have a good answer to questions, to things my parents were asking me. Maybe I didn't want to talk to them. Or in the professionally, if I don't know what I'm talking about, or if something is half-baked, then we have a tendency to mumble.
It's accountability too,
It's accountability.
right?
Mm-hmm. And then also, for them, when they're focused on something else, if they're walking up the stairs, or if they're playing a video game, or something like that, they will just mumble some answer to me. And then there's also nerves too.
Right.
And there it is again. See, something interesting is happening to me right now. And I'm having this experience because I'm thinking, this is so important and so empowering. I think it's so important that you're doing this and creating this awareness, because there are so many people who have crippling fear about speaking in public because they don't want to sound stupid. And
You don't sound stupid.
I think that's so important, but I'm nervous.
Right.
So, and also I'm a grown up now, and I've been doing this for quite a while, so I'm okay. But I'm just thinking of my younger self. But I really needed something like this to help build my confidence.
Right.
For
It is
speaking in the
so
world.
empowering. It's so empowering.
So I think that in short, I think that men and boys really do it too, but that women and girls have a harder time with it.
Okay, thank you, great. Okay, Marcy, are verbal tics and crutches contagious, and do we grow out of them?
Well, I think the short answer is yes. There's an area of linguistics called sociolinguistics, which has to do with language that's adapted for social use. And I think the best way I can illustrate this is give you a little example from my life. Many years ago, when I was going off to college, I went to Oklahoma University. I grew up in Colorado. So I go to college, and a couple of months into it, I realize I'm talking like this. And I'm saying y'all a lot. And I'm not only saying y'all a lot, I'm saying y'all, which is what they do. Y'all going? And y'all, how are y'all today? And I'm sounding like I lived in Oklahoma my whole life, but I didn't. I sound like this. But I did it in order to connect with my peer group. It's simple. And that's why we do it. That's why we're human beings. We're very adaptable. We adapt to the situation. We adapt to the peer group. And if you're in Oklahoma, you just say y'all, and can I come with y'all?
Right.
Sure, come on. Okay.
You're very good at. You still got it.
Oh well, I learned it well. So yes, they are contagious. I
They
think.
are. You know, there was a great story last week about fingerprint words. And the author, it was in Slate, talked about his own words that he apparently says a lot, although he didn't really recognize it until his wife pointed it out. They were bigger words. They were like iteration was his big word. Did you see this? So I think we all have some words. And then he was noticing that other people were saying them too. right? So they are contagious. Do we grow out of them?
Well, you notice that I don't talk like that anymore.
But I think you're a speech language pathologist.
Yeah.
I think the issue is that when you have a habit, per our program,
Oh, absolutely.
unless you practice,
Yeah.
you're really not going to grow out of it. I'm sure all those friends are still saying, "Yo."
Oh, they are. Yes,
Right.
yes. But
Right.
once I moved out of the area, then I moved out of the accent.
Right, that's
Interestingly
that's
enough.
interesting.
But I think it was I was in a theater department, and I think it was that my awareness kind of hit my during that year, and I was able to sort of circumvent it. But we go back to the awareness word that is so important in moving into our best presentation of ourselves.
And I think, too, that again, our celebrity culture and our social media channels are working together to make this even trickier for us. I don't think we're growing out of it. I think it's becoming more pervasive because we have some things that are new in the way that we communicate.
On that, yeah, really underline that, because because during that period of my life, there was not the celebrity culture and the media and the social media. So that is really huge and pervasive in young women hanging on to this.
Everything is reinforced.
Right.
We
Yes.
all mirror each other.
Right.
Right, and it can go cross now, right? Cross country, right? Okay, great. Okay, did it all start with Frank Zappa's daughter Moon Unit 1982 hit song Valley Girl? Like, I'm so sure. Marcy, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about this one, about pre-Valley Girl?
Oh, well, I am pre-Valley girl. Yes, I'm hippie girl. So yes, so we talked about this, and actually it, way back there was cool, and then we talked about the 50s hipsters, and then
And
the
groovy.
60s
You reminded me of
and then the
groovy.
stoners, and then it moved into Valley Girl. But it's been an evolution, but I think particularly in the last 40 years it has evolved into what we have now. I mean, I think there were always regional accents, and it's not really fair to illustrate a regional accent because it's more specific language like we're talking about
Right,
tonight.
the likes,
Yeah.
those
The
discourse
like,
markers.
syndrome.
I learned that term, discourse marker, that's what a like is.
Discourse marker. Yeah.
What about phone conversations that seem so alien to this millennial generation? Pam, we talked about how our kids don't know how to use the phone, right?
It is just amazing to me. My son had this friend who would always call the house, and he would say, "Hello, this is Joe Schmo. I would like to talk to Braden Schiffman." And I kept thinking to myself, how many Braden Schiffmans does he think live in my house? And he would do it every time, and I would get off the phone and I'd say to my kids, "Do you guys know how to use the phone?" And he was very polite, but I thought something has to be done about this. And it's really interesting because when my kids are trying to make social plans and they can't reach a friend, they text them, they call them on cell phone, they Facebook message them, they can't reach them. And I say, "How about trying the landline?" And they look at me like I'm crazy. The landline? Nobody uses the phone. And I said, "We have one in our house. People do call on that, but it's such a foreign concept to them." And I think what's amazing to me is, I agree, texting and emailing are often a lot easier, a lot quicker, but sometimes in your professional life, you need to make a phone call, and sometimes in your personal life as well. And that is something that the millennials, they're just not learning because they have all these other options open to them, but it's something that they really need to learn.
We talked about phone interviews, right? Sometimes when you're looking for a job or an internship, your first pass is a phone call. And if you don't know how to conduct yourself in a phone conversation, you're behind before you even start, right? So,
Absolutely.
and you do that in Skype. We were talking about Skype interviews. Now everything's Skype, right? Great. Okay. Last one. Are these verbal fashion trends acceptable in our personal life but not in our professional lives, right? So this is where it all comes together. And I think there's probably some good discussion here. I don't want to answer this necessarily. I just kind of want to leave you with this one to think about, because I think we've already told you what we think, but I want you to bring this home and think about it too. Okay, so I put together 10 tips to say it like you mean it. I'm going to outline them here, and then I have handouts for you guys that go into more detail. The first one, be aware of your own verbal tics. Number 2, learn to brave the pause. Don't fill it with all those ums and ahs. Speak with conviction and avoid uptalk. Remember, what happens in rehearsal ends up on stage. Model a great speech from an eloquent speaker. Stop apologizing. Leave vocal fry to Zoe, Brittany, and the Kardashians. Avoid the baby voice trap. We didn't talk about this, but I think you probably all know those voices get a little too high to sound kind of appealing to men. Don't do that. Keep your social media feeds clean and enlist your own personal verbal coach, a friend, a parent, somebody like us. Okay, can we talk? Does anybody have any questions?
So I have 2 teenage girls, and of course, obviously, I want them to be confident and eloquent and professional. But my question is, in practicalities going forward, if one of my girls is willing to spend some time and sit down and tell me what happened in their day, or tell me something that they're concerned with, the last thing that they want is for me to be interrupting them every minute and correcting how they're doing it. Right. That's not going to inspire them to do this in the future. If we sit down and I'm spending the whole time interrupting what they're saying, don't keep saying like, and don't take it kind of takes away, any incentive.
And you want them to talk to you.
Right.
You want them
so
to
in terms
talk
of
to
a
you.
practical basis and going forward, I mean, obviously all of this, makes a lot of sense, but how do we get them to do this without us,
Right, and we
as
talked
a
about
parent,
this too.
having
How
to do
a parent is probably the worst possible person, the worst choice to help the kids. Because immediately you're being critical. Immediately you're getting on them for yet another thing. It's more nagging. Did we talk about that, Marcy?
Oh, absolutely. Right. It goes back to your question about the personal and professional life. Once you're moving toward, your daughters are moving toward their professional life, that's when it gets more crucial, of course. But never should the parent be the one to sit and have them listen to themselves and rephrase, because you want that to be spontaneous and heartfelt. So it needs to be somebody else who does that.
This is why we were talking about putting together the speech modification program, building on her accent modification, which is different. It's different. But this idea that this is an issue and we need, it's really hard for a parent. Go ahead.
That's where the whole notion of it takes a village to raise a child comes in. All of us need other mentors and family friends to talk to and get advice from as well. But you want to have that close relationship with your children.
And there are also tools that are available to them. They could take a public speaking class. Everybody's in the same boat, and it will make them aware of things. If they're in college, they could go to career services. Career services will do a mock interview or something like that, record them and make them aware of what they're doing. So there are different ways they can become aware without you having to tell them.
So I was born and raised a genuine Valley girl, so I have the right, I guess, to use the word like, in Southern California in elementary school in the 80s. So I very much appreciate the comments that you have about speech modification and verbal tics. But I had a question as to what insights you might have on communication skills that are relevant in connecting to millennials that perhaps people who are not millennials aren't experienced in. So you mentioned Skype and things like that, and I guess my question is, do you have insights as to whether or not phone skills truly are relevant? Is that something that we really need to be encouraging people to develop, or does the older generation need to adapt to new forms of communication and potentially new forms of speech or things like that? So I'd be curious as to your comments on that.
I think phone skills are critical. I interview people on a regular basis. Sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's over the phone. And in a telephone interview, you get between 15 and 30 minutes to make an impact. If you can't have a conversation, a professional conversation where you can express yourself and your qualifications, you're never going to even get to an in-person interview. And even something, I think someone mentioned something as simple as calling and following up. Maybe you sent a resume and you want to call and follow up and say, I sent a resume, I'm really interested in this summer internship. You need to know how to do that in an appropriate way and confidently. And I think while there's less of that and there might be more, I don't think texting is much at work, but certainly email at work, you still need to use the phone at work. I don't think we're ever going to get away from that. And you're still going to Skype. People have meetings where they Skype. You have webinars where you're talking to other people. You still need those verbal conversation skills.
But it's fascinating. I think what really fascinates me about all of this is because I've worked in consumer technology ever since I got out of school. And I do a lot of social media work. And it really is changing. There's emojis to communicate. What happens if we can all just communicate by sending a symbol of a face, the unhappy, happy? There's a million of them now, right? There's hashtags. There's all sorts of different acronyms. You probably could get like a list of 500 different LOLs and GTKs and BRBs, right? So it's all changing, but there are certain things that really still do matter. And even though it's changing, there is Skype. I Skype every week. I have a client in Lithuania. Every week I'm talking to Lithuania on Skype. And it's still so important. They don't know me. They hired me. Do they want to work with me? The only way I have to show them that I would be a good choice is through my ability to communicate through the computer. But with millennials, they love this stuff. And we all do too. I live with my phone. I try so hard to put it down. So it is a fascinating turn in communication.
You mentioned vocal tics had a major role in getting jobs. Did you research how accents, like different kinds of accents, affected this process as well?
That's a great question for Marcy.
Yes, and it is a great question, and yes, accents affect how you present yourself in an interview. Are you understood? And you could ask that question of the syndrome. Are you understood? Are you confident? Are you comfortable in speaking to somebody who is not a buddy, but somebody that you're interviewing with and you want the job? So yes, they're both very important in how you present.
I'm wondering to the four of you if you feel that you can learn to do it sometimes, but not always. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and she seems to do it more when she's explaining the plot of a movie or talking to her friends, and then she seems to do it less when she's speaking about something she's very confident in. She's perhaps rehearsed it. And I'm just wondering if you think it can be slightly turned on and off, and as Marcy said, maybe turned on socially when it's acceptable socially, and turned off if you have the tools.
Sure, I would say as long as you've done the work and you have the awareness, and you can modify yourself because you've done the work. We all sound different, I think, speaking to our friends. We have more intimate, less formal language. If I'm sitting down for an interview, I'm much more formal, but it has to be available, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I think the filler words, if she's explaining something she doesn't know that well, we tend to do the ums and the ahs. That's when the fillers come in. So it is, when you said, when she's more confident about a topic, she doesn't do it as much. She probably leaves out a lot of those filler words, those like, because she's more passionate and confident. And I think, Lena, you talked about that too. When in your comments, you said when somebody's really practiced and worked on something in spoken word, they don't do it.
No, yeah.
Right, right. So it's practice. It is practice and awareness.
Yeah, I mean, we notice it in ourselves.
We do.
Right? And we had lunch the other day.
We did.
Noticed it.
Well, I don't know if mine's actually a question or maybe an observation or something to think about, but you had mentioned the Roosevelts, and that's been on PBS this week. And they are eloquent speech makers, but they're also, they seemed eloquent in just their everyday life as well. And it made me wonder if, we're losing that eloquence today because we don't have an opportunity to use it. It's not really valued. And going to what you said, Ms. Roy, about, do we think? We don't really think so clearly, so we can't speak so clearly. And so maybe it's just a downward spiral.
This is something that Martin over here brought up with me earlier. Same point. They were so eloquent, and it's our conversation sort of degrading over time.
And our thinking degrading.
Right.
We're not valuing that kind of critical
But I think
thinking.
we do value it. I know I do. I don't know, I guess maybe. I know my daughter when we watch Pride and Prejudice. What did we watch? Little Women. Oh, they speak so beautifully. When you hear somebody, I'm sure you girls too, the younger people here, when you read something that's just so eloquent or so beautifully presented, I think we do appreciate that more, but I think there are just all these different forces coming about that are allowing us to take a lot of shortcuts. And I would hate to think that we would lose some of that eloquence. I'm with you on that. Absolutely.
The world is going so fast. We're bombarded with so much information all the time, so we don't have time to process things. Mm-hmm. But I think people really do value critical thinking.
And speaking, right?
One just last thing. I think that, we may want to get the word out to young women and girls that we're in a very competitive society, and it certainly is a way to stand out from the crowd if you know how to speak and can put yourself across well. So.
I think that's a really good point.
Anyway.
Right, we all want the edge. Thank you, guys. So, again, please, I have stickers too. Say it like you mean it, stickers. Swag.
Got swag.
And again, the screeners here, there's a sign-in sheet and the tips. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you to my panel, to my daughter.